Nothing says I love you like an exploding heart. So as it's Valentine's Day coming up, let's go through this Canva tutorial and let's see how we can make this. Right, so first off, we're going to need a index HTML file. We are going to need a CSS file, although there isn't really much CSS in this project, and a main.js file. So let's start with the HTML. I'm going to use this shortcut here, and then if we just change the title to exploding heart like that. There's not really much HTML in this at all. We're just going to link our style sheet. Okay, and then first we just need our canvas element. We're going to call this heart canvas, so we can access this with the JavaScript. I'm also going to define the width and the height inside of it as well. So we're going to have two buttons. We're going to have the explode heart button and the reset button. So you can see this explodes the heart and this will reset it back to normal button. And then so we're going to call this one explode button, and then we'll just have explode heart inside. Underneath we need our reset button, and then we're just gonna write inside reset heart. And the only other thing we need to do in HTML is link our main.js file. Okay, first we're just gonna select the entire document, just going to put the margin to 0 and the padding to 0, and then in the body we're going to use flexbox, justify content to be center, then we want the height to be 100 viewport, background color just a nice bright color, margin 0 and padding 0, and then we're going to access our canvas element, and then we just want a border just so we can see the canvas when we're editing, and then we want to also see the background. And then for the buttons, margin, some padding, font size, and also want the cursor to point when we hover over it. So this is what we have so far. We will make this the size of the page with JavaScript, but this is our buttons, and this is our canvas element here. Let's carry on with the JavaScript. Alright, so first off, we need to access the canvas element. So to do this, we're going to create a variable called canvas, and we're going to use getElementById to grab ID of our canvas. So this is the shorthand that people normally use for this when we're doing getContext2D. This allows 2D rendering and allows us to draw and do shapes on the canvas element. Next we need to access our button, so we'll just do getElementById explode button, and also we'll do the same for reset button as well. Next we want to set the canvas size. We're going to use our canvas variable, and we're going to say canvas width equals window width. So if we add canvas height window inner height, and you can see now it's the same height as the window. Next we need to declare the variables that we're going to be using later on. So don't worry too much about these at the moment. I can go back over them later, but I will briefly explain what they are. So we've got our scale element, which we'll be using for the size of our heart later. When the heart is pumping, so when it's doing this, grow is we're essentially scaling it up to be that size, and then it will go back down. Exploding, I'm not going to explain that one. Particles, so this just stores the explosion particles that you see when the heart disappears. This is just to determine whether the pop effect is happening or not. Heart visible just controls whether the heart shape is visible or not. This is for the explosion. And heart particles stores the heart shaped particles that will appear after the explosion. Alright, so let's start drawing our heart. So first, our function draw heart, we're going to have two parameters. We're going to have scale factor, so this is just, it's basically going to make the heart grow and shrink in order to make the pumping effect. The opacity is just to make it visible, just like you would on CSS. So we're going to say if heart is visible, and then we're going to use our ctx variable, and we're going to say save. So this saves the current drawing state without affecting other parts of the canvas. We're going to translate. This moves the drawing to the middle of the canvas just so it's not stuck in the corner somewhere. This is what we're going to use a little bit later on to make the heart grow and shrink. So it's just setting the transparency of the heart. We've already defined it up there as equaling 1, so we're just saying we want the heart visible. And then begin path, so you write this every time you're doing a new drawing. This begins a new drawing path, so we can start drawing our heart. So if we look at what we got so far, it's just still a blank canvas. And then this is the starting position of a heart. To do the heart shape, I don't even know if I'm going to say this right. Bezier curve. I've never heard anyone actually say the name of this. Bezier curve. So we're basically saying draws the this is basically going to start drawing the curve of the heart shape, and again this is going to continue making the heart. So the same way we did begin path, we're doing close path to end the drawing. And then we want to decide on the color. So let's say we want to make the heart red, and then this just makes sure that we are filling the heart with the color that we've picked, and then this restores the drawing context to its original state. Let's do our animation, and then we'll call our draw heart function inside of the animation, and we'll make it grow at the same time. So first let's make our function animate heart, and then we'll have our ctx variable. So this is basically just to clear the entire canvas when we animate heart, just so it starts fresh. Then we're going to start the growing of the heart. So if growing, so we've automatically set growing to true up here, and then we're going to say scale plus equals, and we're going to grow it by this amount. Then we're going to say if, so we set scale as 1 earlier, if scale is more than or equal to 1.1, we are going to stop the heart from growing. Now we need to start shrinking the heart, so we'll say else, and then we'll just do the complete opposite because we want it to be a nice smooth pump up, smooth pump back. So we're going to do the same amount just in reverse, so it keeps on pumping. We're going to say if the scale, so once we get to 0.9, growing is going to be true again, and we'll keep doing this over and over again, and it'll just keep pumping like a good heart. Now we're going to call our draw heart function with the updated scale, and then finally we want the request animation frame, so we're going to animate the heart. So this line here is just telling the browser to animate the heart. This also keeps a creator animation loop, so this allows this to keep going up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And then, as we're calling the draw heart function inside of here, we also need to call the animate heart function. So we'll do that outside of the function, and that's it. Let's have a look at our heart. Here is a heart. As you can see, the buttons don't work at the moment, but this is our heart right now. Right, next, under the draw heart function, we need to start creating our explosion. So we're going to start off with the particles first. So if we create our function create particles, just to show you what we're creating, is that there, the actual bang of the explosion. So we're going to create an empty array to hold the particles in. So our loop is going to create 150 particles, so it's going to loop 150 times. Each time this loops, we are going to create a new particle and put it in the particle array. So we are going to create new particle objects and then add it to the end of the array. So we're going to set the X position to the center of the canvas. Also going to set the Y position to the center of the canvas. The particles are going to be different sizes, so we're going to use radius, and then we're going to do math random and then times for +1. This is going to generate a random number between 0 and 1, which is then scaled between 0 and 4. And then to make sure that it's always above 1, we're going to add 1 to this number as well. dx is a shorthand for the horizontal speed. We're also going to generate a random number, and then we're going to times it by 8 as well, just to ensure that each particle is moving at a decent speed. Also going to do the same thing for the vertical speed. So they're not going to stay on the screen for the whole time, so we're also going to create a shrink property for the particle object. This is going to be how much it shrinks per frame. And then because it's a heart explosion, instead of, you see the explosion smoke, it's kind of like grey, we're just going to set like a pink color. Okay, now we've created the particles that are going to go inside of our particles array that we made earlier. Now I need a function to draw the particles in the canvas when we call them later. So first off, we'll make a draw particles function, and just like we did for animate heart, we are going to use this to clear the canvas before drawing, otherwise the previous frames would overlap with new ones and it would just look messy. Next, we are going to call for each on our particles array. P is for each particle in that array, so 150 of them, so this will happen 150 times. And then this is for the index of each particle in that array. Next, just like we did for up here with draw heart, we need to begin path. This is going to draw a circle, and this is going to represent each particle, and then we are using X and Y for the current position of the particle, and also the radius for the size. We are going to decide what color our particle is. So we've already defined earlier it's pink, and then like we did earlier with the heart, to make sure that it is that color, we need to use fill. So next we are going to update the particle's position, so the X position. This is going to be adjusted by the horizontal velocity. So the velocity is going to determine how far and also what direction the particle will move on the X axis. You're then going to do the exact same for the Y axis as well. So we've got the Y axis velocity here, and then the vertical property here as well. And then like we specified in the particles array, how we want it to shrink. Depending on the number given by math_random, we're going to update the radius to give the illusion that each particle is shrinking, and they will, because we're using math_random, this will happen at different rates. With this if statement, we are checking if the radius is 0, and if it is, we want to remove the particle as it no longer exists. We're going to use particle splice and an index, and then we are specifying that we only move in one particle at a time, as some of them will still be visible. Alright, so as you can see at the moment, our explode function isn't going to work. We need to add functionality to the explode heart button, and then also the reset heart button, so we can get back to this lovely pumping heart that we've done. Right, so for the exploding heart button, we need to add a event listener to our explode button. So we're going to use the click event listener, as we will be clicking the button. The if is heart visible statement here is to check if the heart is hidden or not. This may be because we'd already clicked the explosion button. We're going to add underneath here, we're going to reset the heart state just so we can do the explosion again. Now to signal the explosion animation, we need to set exploding as true. As you can see at the top, we've got exploding as false, otherwise it would just do it as soon as we load up the page. So we've got exploding as true on click, and then the other animation we're going to have is pop effect, so we're also going to be setting that to true as well. This is going to get the heart to grow rapidly. So because we need to use the reset button, I've added in here that we'll disable the explode button until we've clicked reset, otherwise we won't be able to use the explode button again. And then we want to do a reset button, so again we're going to add an event listener, which is click onto our reset button, and then we're going to reset heart state, so it resets everything. And then this is going to allow us to click the explode button after we click reset. We've got a few more things to add just so we can click these buttons. We need to call the create particles inside of our explode button. Okay, next we need to reset the heart state. So we're basically just going to reset everything that's up here. So function reset heart state, and then this is just going to clear the canvas to make sure nothing else is there. We're going to set our scale back to 1, growing back to true, exploding equals false. Our particles array is going to be empty. Pop effect is false. Heart visible, true. Our heart particles, we want to reset them as well. And finally, we also want to make sure you can click the explode button as well. Okay, next we want to add our explosion into the animation so we can animate everything we've just done. So first we're going to say if exploding, so we're going to check if exploding equals true. Next we're going to check if the heart should rapidly grow before the explosion, so pop effect will be set to true. And then this is going to say this is how we want it to rapidly grow. The larger the scale gets, the larger the heart's going to go. That's going to keep going up until the explosion. And then in this if statement, once the heart gets to this size, we want to hide the heart so it disappears off the screen, and we also want to stop growing the heart as we can no longer see it. This is going to draw the rapidly growing heart at its current scale, and this is going to happen until it disappears. And then we want to say else. We want to draw the particle, so when the pop effect is false, the code is going to call draw particles and show the explosion, so it's going to give the illusion that the heart's exploded. And then just want to say else, and then the rest of our code down here. Right, just before we see our animation, I've just quickly moved this to where it is now, just to make sure that the animation continuously goes on. So if we have a look at what we've made so far, if you want to add a sound to your explosion, there's various different websites where you can get some sounds from. I've added a sounds folder, and I've put an MP3 inside of there, as you can see, balloon pop MP3. I'm going to add this to my code here, and if we come down to the animation section, so once the explosion happens, I want to first make sure that it starts at the beginning of the audio track. I then want to call play on the sound so it plays. So should we have a listen? Alright, next we need to start making those little hearts, there's a fair amount to this, so let's get started. So first I'm going to create a function called heart. These parameters are the x coordinate, the y coordinate, horizontal velocity, the vertical velocity, and also the radius. And then all we'll be adding in underneath here is this x, so we'll be adding in the x coordinate, the y coordinate, the horizontal velocity, the vertical velocity, and also the radius of the hearts. Next we need to do the colors. Okay, so I'm personally going to be doing shades of red and pink, but it's up to you what colors you want to do. So I'm going to have a function here because I want to pick randomly out an array of colors, and then inside the array, these are the colors I'm going to be doing, and then I'm going to be picking the colors at random using mathfloor and mathrandom, and then timesing it by the colors length, and I'll be selecting one of these colors here. And then finally we will say the color is, and then whatever the random number generator selects. Next we need to draw the heart, so we'll make a draw function. So just like with the heart earlier, first we need to say begin path, and then with move to, I'm selecting a starting point which is at the top center of the heart, and then I'll be using Bezier curves again to make the shape of the heart. I'm doing this twice to complete the heart, and then we'll be applying a color to each one. So I'll be using this color, be using fill to make sure it fills the heart with that color. So here's the one I made earlier. As you can see, the hearts are bouncing off the edges and they're not disappearing. Well, we need to make sure that when we make our hearts that they don't just keep going forever and disappear. We're going to say this update equals function, and then we're going to use width and height for boundary checks to make sure that the hearts are bouncing off the correct area. So we're going to check if the heart has hit the boundaries of the canvas, either on the left or the right side, and then we're basically going to get it to reverse horizontally if it has hit that boundary. And then we're going to do a similar thing for the top and the bottom edges. We're going to get it to reverse its velocity and bounce away from the side of the canvas. And then we just need to update the position of the heart based on its speed, and then we just need to call the draw method just to render the updated heart. Okay, now we need to create our create heart particles function. So we want to make sure our heart particles array is cleared. There's nothing existing in it at the moment. We also want to make sure that the hearts aren't created too close to the edges, because they can just get trapped and they just kind of bounce around on the same side up and down. So then we want to loop as many hearts as we want. So in this case we're going to have 100. Feel free to just have 2 or 200 or whatever you feel like. There will be a certain point where it just gets extremely cluttered and laggy, but have fun. So we are going to generate a random X and Y position for each particle, but also going to add padding at the end just so we avoid the edges. This is going to be their starting position, and then we're going to randomly generate velocity for both dx and dy, so each one is going to have a different speed. And then when we put it all together, this is going to add to our heart particle array a new heart particle, and then it's going to add all of these, so it'll be our random position and our random velocity. And then we've also got a radius of 15 as well. Okay, now we just need to put all of this together. So after the explosion, we want to create particles and also create heart particles. Next, we want to update our function and then say if heart visible. Then we're going to leave all of this how it is. Then after the explosion, we are going to draw the heart particles, and then we are going to animate the heart particles. And let's check our project. Look at that. So we've got different colored hearts. They're bouncing off the sides, bouncing off the bottom, and it also resets as well after a certain period of time and goes back to exactly how it was in the beginning. Look at that, that's perfect, and even the sound's not too loud as well. I really hope you enjoyed this project. Hopefully if you're making this for someone over Valentine's Day just because you want to be a bit soppy, I hope they enjoy it. If you want to see more Canva demonstrations and more of these tutorials in the future, let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!